They say that war is a terrible thing, that the fight is never worth the lives lost. During World War II, the war was not the only terrible thing that took place. The battleground was not the only setting where an atrocious mass of lives were lost. World War II was born out of hatred, a hatred driven by one man towards a religion and its people. The Jewish people were seen as inferior and lesser than. During the Holocaust, over 6 million Jewish people were murdered, and overall, within this disgusting, outrageous genocide, over 17 million people were murdered. 1935 would begin the egregious acts that would unfold over 10 long and bloody years. Only 4 years after that saw the Jewish people shoved into train cars and taken to concentration camps to live or to die, one would never know. After 10 years of relentless and inhumane persecution, the Allies had won the war, and the Jewish and others in hiding or being held were free. In an intense moment of weakness after World War I, Germany took on a new leader, Adolf Hitler. Hitler ruled Germany for less than 15 years and will be forever known as one of the most infamous and terrible dictators to rule. His ability to spread hate throughout Germany was astounding, and soon the Jewish people were experiencing more than stares and nasty words. Many began to follow Hitler's beliefs that Jewish people were inferior and a threat to racial purity within Germany. In 1935, the first act was taken against the Jewish people in the form of the Nuremberg Laws, drawn up at the annual rally. These new laws prohibited marriages, sexual relations between German Jews and persons of German or related blood. They as well placed a more precise definition on whom even if one was not practicing nor deemed themselves a follower of the Jewish religion, they may still be deemed Jewish if they had 3 to 4 grandparents who had identified or belonged to the Jewish community. 3 years later, after the Olympic Games took place within Germany, the government took new measurements to identify Jewish people. They began to stamp a red J on their identity cards, as well as giving them new middle names if they did not possess Jewish first names, allowing others to more easily identify them as Jewish. Later that same year, the Night of Broken Glass took place. The government planned to destroy the homes and businesses of those owned by Jewish people, as well as arresting many of them as possible to send to the concentration camps. A reported 7,500 Jewish shops were looted, and several counts of rape and murder took place. The rapists were persecuted, for they were ignoring the Nuremberg laws that had been put into place, but the murderers were praised. They were merely following orders. In the first stages of the Nazis' final solution in the extermination of the Jews, they had Nazis use mobile killing squads consisting of 4 units of about 500 to 900 men called the Einsatzgruppen. These men followed the German troops into the Soviet Union and were used specifically to kill the Jewish people. In 1942, they were ordered to stop after murdering 1.5 million Jewish people. This halt on violence was due to the effectiveness of the concentration camps, as well as to spare the shooters from being forced to experience such violence. In January of that year, the agreement to transport and end the lives of 11 million Jewish people took place at the Wannsee Conference. The genocide of the Jewish people had begun. From 1942 to 1945, Jewish people were transported from all over Europe to death camps, with more than 300,000 being transported during the summer and fall of 1942 from the Warsaw ghettos. Of all the concentration camps created during World War II, the most well-known of them all was Auschwitz. The death camp was located in the south of Poland, where 12,000 Jews were killed a day, and over 2 million people brutally and cruelly lost their lives by the end of the war, the majority of them being Jewish. Those brought in were there for one of 3 reasons, which would not be determined until arrival. One would either be seen as fit and used for slave labor. They may be seen as too young or weak and be immediately sent to take a shower, where they were stuffed into a room full of multiple other people to be gassed and murdered. The last option for one arriving at the death camp would be experimentation. Without consent and without permission, these doctors would perform unethical, trauma-inducing, and even death-resulting tests. Upon arrival, the new prisoners were questioned, separated, and removed of all their belongings, including their hair. The life that one had while at camp was no life at all, but constant starvation, torture, a demeaning experience where one was treated as less than human. When the defeat of Germany became certain, those running the camp had much of the evidence of the horrors that had taken place within destroyed, and when the invasion of the Allied troops loomed, they abandoned the camp. They forced their 60,000 prisoners to walk 30 miles, known as death marches, to be transported to another camp located in Germany. When the Soviets made it to Auschwitz, they found 7,600 emaciated, starving, and sick prisoners who had been left behind, as well as mounds and mounds of corpses. Unlike Auschwitz, which was used previously to hold political leaders, the Belzec concentration camp was built solely for the purpose of exterminating the Jewish people. It as well was located in the south of Poland and was chosen as a death camp for the sole purpose of its beneficial location near multiple railways. The first transport of Jews arrived towards evening sometime in March 1942. It consisted of about 15 wagons. This train was taken onto the siding. Later during the evening of the same day, at about 9 o'clock, I heard from outside my house, which was in the station, the dreadful screaming of children, women, and men, mingled with occasional rifle and machine gun fire, quoted from a young girl who was forced to experience such a sight. Operating for less than a year, over 600,000 Jews lost their lives at Belzec. As the conclusion of the war came, the Soviets were the first to enter and free those trapped within concentration camps. July 23, 1944, they liberated the Monjane camp, soon after multiple others, and then in January of the following year, they were able to enter Auschwitz. Prisoners experienced extreme starvation and suffered from intense PTSD after being liberated. Many were forced to start new lives without the loved ones they had lost due to this tragedy. Others spent years yearning and searching for those they hoped had survived. To this day, many still discuss the experiences within the camps and how it changed their lives. World War II saw 3% of the world's population killed. Killed due to sickness, killed in gunfire, or killed in a room full of gas. The Holocaust stole the lives of up to 6 million Jewish men, women, and children, for no other reason than one man's hatred and supremacist ideals that were able to take hold of an entire country. Many atrocities will be remembered throughout time, but none so greatly as the genocide that captured the world for 10 long years.